Welcome to the MS&Me Radio Network, a division of the Multiple Sclerosis Global Support Network. The following program broadcast is an original creation by the broadcast entity. Discussion within the following broadcast should be used for informational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional medical advice or consultation. Before considering application of any broadcast content in the following program, please consult your healthcare provider. If you feel you are having a medical emergency, please contact your local health services for immediate assistance. MS&Me Media and the Multiple Sclerosis Global Support Network do not guarantee or warrant the accuracy of information in the broadcast to follow. The Multiple Sclerosis Global Support Network provisions broadcast services to program hosts. Information discussed in the broadcast does not necessarily reflect the views, opinions, or goals of the network and are solely those of the show broadcast host. Should you wish to host a broadcast, please visit our website at msmemedia.com and submit a request to become a program host. We thank you for listening to the MS&Me Radio Network. Enjoy the show.
Welcome to A Life Less Traveled. Hi, I'm your host, Michael Wentink. I'm 40 years old and live in San Antonio, Texas with my wife and 2 children. I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis about 10 years ago. And I write about my journey of living with MS, and you can check that out at my website at mjwentink.com. That's mjwentink.com. Often I share my stories with the National MS Society, and they post them up on their blog page at the msconnection.org. Or you can also check them out at themighty.com. If you happen to be on Twitter, you can find me at mjwentink. Again, that is mjwentink. Please feel free to shoot me a tweet. Love to connect. On Twitter, most Monday nights at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, you can find me at chatms. That's hashtag chatms. A group of us gets together to kind of talk about issues that relate to the MS community. So I hope that you get a chance to check that out as well. Our conversation today is going to be part 2 of my journey to the diagnosis of multiple sclerosis. I want to give a brief recap of part 1. All in, it was about a 10-year journey. When I look back and remember that moment where I finally officially learned that I had multiple sclerosis, first thing was it wasn't too much of a surprise to me. I even had the thought in my head as we were flying up to the Mayo Clinic, like, this is a strong possibility. And that's not because, I was smarter than any of the doctors that were treating me. It's a reminder, first of all, that we know our bodies. We know our bodies pretty darn well, much better than most people. We can tell doctors what we feel and what we know, but we know our body as well. But it was also a long journey, so many things have been ruled out along the way. So MS wasn't my first choice, but it was my best choice at that time. And when I did finally hear those words, there was a part of me that actually felt relief. This chapter of my life was finally over, of not knowing what was happening to me and having tests that were inconclusive or unremarkable, the results being unremarkable. So it was finally like, I have an answer. I know what it is that's been bothering me. I can put a name to it, and now I can move forward. So I had talked about a lot of the different issues in part 1 that I was having up to that point, the tingling and the numbness and the feet or the hands and these random shooting pains I was having, and certainly had many stomach issues. As it turns out, those weren't necessarily related to my MS, but was having a lot of issues just with eating and leaving me in lots of pain. I constantly, frequently need to use the restroom after eating, and an increase in a fatigue level. I mean, really, I don't want to say increase in fatigue level. It's just a huge drop in energy. Just trying to get around, always falling or always being exhausted. I did start falling as well. I noticed it, playing basketball or racquetball, and even just walking around up and down stairs, I was having issues. It was like I was becoming more clumsy or something. I wasn't sure what was going on. Where I had left off in part 1, our friends Mark and Melissa, they came and visited us from Virginia. They had a young son at the time, as we did when our first was born. So our good friends came and visited and stayed at our house, and that's when I had the trip to the emergency room that night. At the time, the emergency room doctor was thinking maybe it was ulcerative colitis. That's what he had said. I was like, well, maybe this is the issue. And I was, there that night in the emergency room, just wanted to leave and get back home to our son was at home. Our friends were at home with our son. I mean, a lot of me was feeling embarrassed. I wasn't really even concerned about my health at the time. I was just like, let's just get back. This is silly. I have like a tremendous stomach ache. I mean, I knew it was more than that, but I didn't want to think about it. I wanted to move on with life, and that's what we did. We left the hospital and head on back home. And when we did, our friends left and went back to Virginia, and I went to work on that following Monday, and the pain struck again, and it was just as bad again in my stomach. And that's when we went back to the emergency room, and this time I was admitted into the hospital, and they started doing the testing on me. One thing I wanted to mention about the testing, I know I talked about it in the first episode about being tested for tumors and cancer and stuff. And I'm afraid that my voice, like it could come across as I have like a positive inflection in my voice, or I know that I laugh through many of these moments of recollection. But being told by a doctor that we're going to check to see if you have cancer or a tumor, that's a dark moment in anyone's life. And it certainly was for me. I mean, the first thing is that if not all of you, most of you have probably lost somebody to cancer. So I don't want anyone to think that I'm being flip when I'm mentioning that or careless with my words, because this matters to me. This was hard to hear, these things. I was constantly being tested for it. I mean, at a certain point after our son was born, I remember purchasing a video camera, and the primary reason of purchasing that video camera was because I wanted to take videos, be able to talk to my son, because I didn't know what the future held. And I know that, looking back now, that seems like, dramatic and everything. But at that moment, I didn't know. And what I did know is that no one could figure out what was wrong with me. And if I was being tested for something, it was usually a very exact disease I never heard of, or, it was a tumor or cancer. And it was hard to process that. Because it's not, you don't go in and the doctor says, well, we think we might have a tumor. Here, come here. Let me take a closer look. Oh, no, you're fine. You're good. It doesn't work that way. You go in, you rehash all the symptoms to your doctor, and they say, okay, well, we're going to rule this out, or we're going to test you for this. Okay, great. So I'm going to be tested or ruled out for a tumor or cancer. But now I wait, because now I have to set up the testing. And then you go into the testing. Maybe that's a couple days later, maybe that's a week later. And then you have the testing, and then you wait for the results. And then you go into your doctor for the results. I mean, that's a long time period. Life is going on around you. We had a newborn. He's, even before, Vincent was born, this was occurring. But, during that process, we had a newborn. He's crying at night and wakes up because he's hungry. Or, I go to work the next day. I hang out with friends on the weekend. I mean, life continues to revolve around you. And it's hard when this constant black cloud is just always following me. It doesn't matter how beautiful it is outside or how wonderful the day or week might be going. That black cloud is always there. And that's something that I wanted to just make sure that I covered and everyone understood. It was a very tough time period going through that, and it would be for anyone. There were certainly a lot of things I look back on, the comedic effects of them. When we were in the emergency room the first time, it was late at night. Obviously, it was the middle of the night, and I remember being wheeled around on this stretcher, going from room to room, I guess, for testing. I can't remember now why. And my wife was with me, and I was waiting in a room, and it's like you hear the doctors and the nurses talking and laughing. And at that time, one of the popular TV shows was Grey's Anatomy. And I'd never seen Grey's Anatomy. My wife had never seen it either. But I don't know why. It's just like I had this moment where I just, I looked at her, and I was like, this must be how it is on Grey's. And that kind of became our like running inside joke throughout the rest of all these appointments that I kept having. It's like, this must be what it's like on Grey's. Because when you're going through something like that, I know that probably sounds silly to a lot of you listening, but it's just, you're trying to find peace. You're trying, at least that's what I'm doing. If I'm not making a joke, I'm thinking about something in my head, or I'm just trying to find peace with everything. Why am I lying in this hospital bed in the middle of the night trying to figure out what is wrong with me? As I mentioned, I was readmitted back into the hospital, and they began a long line of testing to try to, go down the road of ulcerative colitis. During that time there, that was a tough stay at the hospital. I ended up getting sick. I don't know if I got an infection while I was there or it was unrelated to the hospital stay there. So I can't remember if it was how many days exactly I was there. Maybe it was an entire week. I'm not sure. But what I do remember was, you go to sleep at night and that's what you get. And someone comes walking in. As soon as it's like you hear that door whooshing open. 2:00 in the morning, someone's coming in to scan my stomach. It's like, I can't remember the exact times. It seems like it was the middle of the night, but those knocks that I heard, it was, after a while, it's just like, oh, when will this end? I shared a room with someone, and he was a nice enough guy, but he loved Law and Order, or either that, or he couldn't figure out any other channel on the TV. Because it was on, I don't know if that's on TNT or one on TBS, one of those channels, but it was just like on a Law and Order marathon, and it was nonstop. And that beginning noise, dun dun, that echoed in my head for years. I mean, even to this day, when I hear that noise, I flinch a little, remembering those long nights and long days in the hospital room. So eventually, while I was there, in between the dong-dongs and the jokes of my wife about is it Grey's Anatomy or not, I met with a GI doctor, because originally it was the emergency room doctor that was thinking maybe it was ulcerative colitis. Well, the GI doctor, he came in, met with me, and asked me a bunch of questions, and there was more tests to be done, but he started thinking that maybe this was Crohn's disease. And I was like, okay, so Crohn's disease, that's the road we're going to go on now. And eventually, I was released from the hospital and was feeling better. And that's when I started going to meet with my GI doctor. And when I say GI doctor, if you're unfamiliar with that, that's gastrointestinal doctor. Now you know why I say GI doctor. And I had a colonoscopy, an endoscopy. I had the craziest things where it's like I would eat some food, or maybe I was drinking something, and then and I had like this battery pack attached to like my side that was like almost kind of like it was filming it as it was going through my body. These memories I have of these random things occurring to me. It just seems so surreal now looking back on it. But a lot of the tests that he did, they didn't necessarily come back like, oh, okay, it's definitely Crohn's, because I guess Crohn's, much like multiple sclerosis in a way, it's not like they can give you a blood test or figure things out. It's oftentimes it relies on other things, and so nothing came back conclusively that was like, oh, it's definitely Crohn's disease. But I think just based on the results that he saw and the issues that I was having, he thought, we're going to go with Crohn's and we're going to start treating you as you have Crohn's disease. And so I was like, okay, this is an answer. Finally, Crohn's disease, or so I thought. I have a family history of it, the things that were occurring to me. Okay, let's go. Crohn's. And so I started being treated for it. It was, he gave me, I believe it was called Pentasa. It was these, I still remember them, these blue pills. Took 4 of them twice a day. They're huge pills. They're like horse-sized pills. And, twice a day, I probably drank 2 glasses of water each time just to get them down each time I took them. And I'm not sure if it necessarily helped with the stomach issues that I was having or not. I know that my diet, if it was bland before that, it was even more bland. I was very selective about what I was eating or drinking, for that matter. But I was excited in a way that I finally did have an answer, and this is something I could treat. Okay, so I'm not going to be having rich food growing up. That's cool, but I just don't want to deal with that pain again. I even, found out there was an NFL quarterback, David Gerard. He had Crohn's disease, and I was like, all right, this is my new favorite NFL quarterback. At the time, I think he was playing for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Not that I was a fan of their team, but I was a fan of David Gerard. I was like, this guy rocks. I mean, I think he even had part of his intestine removed, but he kept playing. I was like, okay, I can identify with the pain that he's going through. And so that was where my life was going, what I thought it was going to be. Well, the other issues, the symptoms I had mentioned before, they continued, the tingling and stuff like that, and the falling down. But a lot of the stuff, it was random enough, and it wasn't so common. Where it was like, okay, I chalked a lot of these things up to, just again, life, right? Being a new father, going to grad school, trying to climb the corporate ladder, just everything that was going on. Well, I like to run, and I'd run frequently throughout our neighborhood. And one day I was out running, just down the street. I remember I was like looking at one of the houses because I think they were doing construction on it in our neighborhood, and my leg goes out, my left leg, and I didn't fall to the ground, but it was just one of those things where it's just I was close to it, and it just stopped me. I was like, whoa, okay. All right, so let me start with my jog again, and I'm running along, and it happens again. I was a little freaked out because it was just like this. I wasn't able to control this. It's like, why is my leg just giving out like this? So I walked the rest of the way back home, but I remembered that and kind of just I'm gonna keep this in the back of my mind. I'm not sure. Maybe that was just a fluke thing. Maybe I need more rest. And I need to be smart about this. Well, this was probably around winter time that this happened with my leg, but then something else happened that I wasn't going to be able to just say, oh, it's not a big deal. It started off feeling like it was like a really bad sinus headache. That's at least what I thought it was. It was this consistent pain. When I say consistent, I mean it was pretty much throughout the day on the right side of my face. It was confined to like my eye and upper head area. It wasn't like incredible amounts of pain, but it was almost like just like this feeling of like swollenness there, and it wouldn't go away. And it was probably about a week that this issue was going on with this pain that I was having. But then I started having issues with my vision. my peripheral vision. It was like trying to look out of my right eye. Like, for example, if I was like looking in the mirror to shave or something like that, I couldn't. Number one, it hurt if I tried, and number two, I couldn't even really see. And I was like, okay, well, this is bizarre. I went to an optometrist and let her know what was happening, and she was like, well, you probably have a sinus infection or a brain infection. I was like, okay, well, here we go again. And she ordered up for me to have a CAT scan done. Now, I want to stress, again, she said CAT scan, because one thing to note is that at no point along the way did I have an MRI done. And that was a key issue here, that MRI never occurred. But so again, I went and had the CAT scan and waited for the results. And a lot of times, like, I feel like whenever it's like a result of something like where it might be a tumor or a brain infection or something like that, it's always like over like a long holiday weekend, and trying to have, I don't know if this is around Christmas time or New Year's or something, and trying to hang out with family with this on your mind. I just want to know the answer. What is going on? And I go in and I met with her, and she was like, well, they both came back, negative. It's neither. It's like, okay. So she was going to prescribe me an oral steroid. I mean, I didn't, there was some sort of issue that was happening with my eye and my vision. She couldn't, wasn't quite sure why. But she prescribed me an oral steroid. And I remember being there in her office as she was writing up the prescription. And we were talking, and she was telling me how it was going to work, how many times I was going to need to take it, because it was like a daily, steroid that I was going to take. And I said to her, I was like, "Do you think this might be MS?" I don't know why I said it. It was one of the many things that I was reading at the time. A lot of different possibilities. But what I knew is that Crohn's disease shouldn't be impacting my vision. And I mean, it certainly shouldn't be impacting my mobility, if you will, but I wasn't thinking about the whole running and my leg giving out. But I knew it shouldn't be impacting my vision. And I was like, do you think this might be MS? And I still remember this moment where she's there scribbling, writing her doctor notes, and she just stopped. Just like that right there. It was just dead silence. And then she kept writing again. It was like, I remember thinking, did I just upset her? Because I'm sure, as a doctor, you get a lot of people that come in because they read stuff on, WebMD or Wikipedia, and they're doing self-diagnoses for themselves. And as I look back, I'm like, I wonder still to this day, like, what was she like? Oh man, here we go again. Someone else diagnosing themselves, or maybe she was like, because at the time, as I had said, it was a CAT scan, and she said the reason that she was going to do the CAT scan is because I guess there was maybe with the MRI, doing an MRI, she wasn't sure if my insurance would have an issue with it. And I'm not entirely familiar with this stuff. I'm not sure why an MRI would make a difference versus a CAT scan. Maybe one's more expensive than the other. Maybe, I'm not sure. But all I know is that there was a reason why I was doing the CAT scan instead of the MRI. But I do look back and wonder, like, what was she thinking in those moments? But so I took the steroid, and the pain went away. So it helped with that. The vision didn't necessarily get better. In fact, new vision issues started happening. When it was like dark at night, I would notice these like bright lights that I was seeing. It was like, it would be something like off in the distance, there are fireworks or something. There was no noise. It was just like these bright lights that were happening. And then I started, I guess they call them the floaters that you get in your eyes, where it's like I would see like these, it was like these imaginary things just floating down. And really, even at one point, it was like I had something looked like a curtain was falling on my vision. it was, kind of just a bizarre thing. I'd be like in a meeting at work, and it's like this curtain is coming down. It is, I can't see. I remember walking around my office at work because my peripheral vision was getting worse as well. Like just even being able to see out of the corner of my eyes, and walking from meeting to meeting, I would just keep my eyes straight forward ahead. I remember people being like, "Hey, Mike," and I'm like, "Hey," I can't imagine what they were thinking. It's like I wouldn't even glance their way, but it was just it was freaking me out that I wasn't able to see things because I was trying to just live a normal life still, and just who knows why I was having these vision problems, but I got to keep, just going with the things that I have in life. And, being in meetings and the people are talking next to you. I remember I'd have to swing in my chair to like look at them directly because I couldn't just see out of the corner of my eye. So, even during this time period, I remember talking to my wife about my vision, and I was like, I don't want to lose my vision, man. I don't want to lose my taste or anything. I'm thinking about all the different senses, hearing, vision, taste. I'm like, can you imagine that? And I think like a day or two later, I woke up and I wasn't even able to taste. I mean, can you believe this? Like I was able to taste things, but it was like a very muted taste. You have something that tastes wonderful, whatever the food might be, and it's just like I know what it should be, but I couldn't taste it. I was like, all right, now someone's just listening to me, and I'm not even going to talk about what I don't want to happen to me anymore because who knows what's going to happen. Well, I met with my GI doctor, and I was explaining to him, how I was having the vision issues. And I mean, he was aware of all that stuff that's going on, the test and everything. And I was just like, I don't see how this is Crohn's. It just doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't add up. And he's like, you're right. And I'm not against getting a second opinion. And that's when he told me he was going to write something up for me. And at that time, I didn't suggest the Mayo Clinic to him. I wasn't even entirely familiar with the Mayo Clinic or what it even was. I mean, I knew about it, like I knew the name, and I knew theoretically kind of what it stood for. It was a great place to go to, but I wasn't entirely familiar with the area. And but he wrote up the to get the second opinion, and sure enough, this was probably like around the March time period, and pretty soon after that, I don't know if it was a few days or a week or so, they called and left a message on our machine and to set up a time to come see them, and that's exactly what I did. We set up some time, and it was going to be in early May that we're heading up to Rochester, Minnesota on a road trip. Our son was going to stay here in Texas. My parents were going to watch over him. And my wife and I, we were going to go fly up to Rochester, Minnesota to figure out what is going on with me. Solve the mystery that had been plaguing me for at least a decade. I hope you tune in to part 3, the final part of my journey to the diagnosis of MS. And check me out at mjwentink.com. Again, that is mjwentink.com, WENTINK. Or find me on Twitter at mjwentink, WENTINK. I hope to hear from you there, and I really hope that you will listen in again to hear part 3. Thank you, and hope you have a fantastic day.